Today we honor Jesus Christ, the King. We honor the risen Jesus, the King of all the universe, all that there is, all that there has been, and all that there ever will be. We're honoring the King of all kings. No matter how large or powerful or influential the various kingdoms of the earth have been throughout history, they've all been human kingdoms, all limited. No matter how good some of these kingdoms have been, and there have been some where the poor and the marginalized have been taken care of, and the kings and the queens have been very concerned about their people, they're still broken kingdoms. The king we honor today is a cosmic king. A king who is in communion with God the Father and the Holy Spirit. And his kingdom is not limited by human frailty or by space and time. The good news is that you and I are subjects of this kingdom. We too are in communion with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And this Jesus we worship is at the same time our brother and the cosmic Christ. The readings today all speak of this kingdom in one way or another. In the strange and apocalyptic language of the book of Daniel, we hear about this vision of the Son of Man being presented to the Ancient One and receiving an everlasting kingdom, a kingdom in which all nations of the earth will serve this king. And this kingdom stands against all earthly kingdoms. For this king came not in glory, but as a poor child. This king came not to dominate his people, but to shed his blood for them, to suffer for them, and to give his life for all of us. Every earthly kingdom, no matter how benign and how benevolent, is always going to be about domination, who's in, who's out, who's powerful, who's not. They're always going to be about limitations and failures of human judgment. And they'll be about unavoidable violence, conflict, and death. None of these are characteristics of the kingdom of the Son of Man. And then in the gospel, we have Jesus in a conversation with Pilate. Pilate, the Roman, has a job. He's the procurator. His job there in Palestine is to keep order, to put down any rebellions, to make sure that Caesar would get every penny of taxes that were due to him. Pilate didn't have an easy job. The Jews were rebellious, fractious, difficult to get along with. And so Pilate could be murderous and merciless when it came to putting down any rebellions. And so his main concern in talking to Jesus is Jesus going to be a threat to me? Is he going to foment another rebellion? And if so, I'm going to treat him very harshly. But Jesus is aware of Pilate's fears. Jesus also knew that many of his followers wanted to make him into exactly the kind of king that Pilate was afraid of. They wanted him to unite Israel, to throw the Romans out, to make Israel a great kingdom, as David had done 1,000 years earlier. But Jesus always rejected that path. And so he assures Pilate his kingdom is not of this world. Pilate doesn't have to fear that Jesus is going to bring about a political takeover. You and I are also not of this world. True enough, we live here. And this is a good world, part of God's creation. We're supposed to enjoy the beauty of this world. But we've been summoned out of this world. We've been summoned to something greater, to an everlasting kingdom. Now, in John's gospel, John always talks about the world in two different ways. The first way is what I've just been saying, that this world is part of God's creation, part of God's beauty, and we're meant to enjoy it. But in the second sense, this world is broken, wounded, a slave to sin and injustice, to fear and violence, to power and control over others. So we exist in this world, in this broken world, but we've been called out of it. And our job, our mission, is to bring the value of the eternal kingdom into this broken world of ours and transform it little by little, day by day. So we're in the world, but not of the world. And every once in a while, you and I can experience a taste of what the everlasting kingdom is like. Just a taste. But these tastes give us hope of what's ahead for us. And when you and I live from the values of the eternal kingdom and can put behind, even if it's only for a few minutes, the values of this world, the relentless desire to consume, to have more possessions, more power, more control over others, put aside the jealousy and the anger and the contempt that we feel at times towards others who are not like us and who we see as a threat. If we just put those values aside and take on the values of the cosmic Christ, then we are part of this everlasting kingdom. It's within us. We're embodying it. So just think for a moment of those times when you were in service to someone else. You gave them something of yourself, not because you wanted anything back, but just because you wanted to do it for them. Think of times when you actually willed the good of another person for who they were, not because they would make you feel like you were something better. Think about a time when you put someone else first, freely, with generosity. Remember those times when you forgave someone who hurt you and didn't react in screaming anger or cursing. In those moments you were living from this kingdom of Christ the King. This King in all his humility is living within you, who's giving you the impulses to do that generous or forgiving thing, that act of service, and then to enable you to carry it out. So it's no accident that next week we come to the beginning of Advent, a time of penitence and preparation. It's fortunate that this feast of Christ the King comes when it does, to help us prepare for the penitential work of Advent. So let's you and I commit to really making some changes, not just thinking about changes, but actually making changes. Being willing to change our habits, our ways of thinking, ways of acting that come from living in this world all our lives. Let's remember that we've been called out of this world. We've been called to change our habits, these old habits. And when we do that, our lives will change too. And always we do it not just ourselves alone, but with the power and the joy of the Holy Spirit. So let me close by offering a prayer that I came across recently, a prayer to the Holy Spirit for all of us sinners. Replace my anxiety with a quiet confidence. Replace my bitterness with the sweetness of grace. Replace my darkness with a gentle light. Replace my coldness with a loving warmth. Replace my night with your day. Replace my winter with your spring. Strengthen my crookedness. Fill my emptiness. Dull the edge of my pride, but sharpen the edge of my humility. Light the fires of my love. Quench the flames of my lust. Let me see myself as you see me, that I may see you as you have promised, and be blessed according to your word. For blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God.